Good evening, members of the Governance Committee, and to the general public who may be watching this evening. We have four officers to give us a final brief so that those two members who were unable to get here earlier have an eye. Apologies. Declarations of interest? None? No showing any declarations. Questions and deputations?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting held previously on page 5 and 6 of your report. These went to full council a few weeks ago and were adopted. Any comments at all?
Move it, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed.
Draft statement of accounts.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm just testing you, that's all.
Okay.
You see, you know, I didn't know whether the heat had affected anyone tonight. How can I go from 4 to 6? I do not know. Sorry about that, but I always often make a little mistake just to lead you on. Item 5 is the draft statement of accounts, page 7 to 150. Again, the finance officer to give us a brief outline. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to be aware in your introduction, I don't know if it's the same for Julie and Ollie, but it dropped out a couple of times, so you'll have to let me know if I do drop out and you can't hear anything I say, but I'll crack on. So this is the draft statement of accounts for 2021, which we are seeking approval from Governance Committee for. So the process is that the accounts are produced with a deadline. The draft accounts are produced with a deadline of the 31st of July. The accounts were actually published and produced by the 22nd of June and presented to Audit Committee on Monday, the 26th of July for review and comment, and then passed on to Governance Committee this evening for final sign-off. Appendix A contains the full draft statement of accounts. It's 140 pages, so I don't intend to go through it in any detail this evening, but it is in front of you in Appendix A, should anyone want to review it. As I mentioned, the deadline for the draft publication is the 31st of July. That has extended from the 31st of May, and it had been the 31st of May for a few years, but partly due to COVID and partly due to a review by Lord Redmond, the deadline is extended to the 31st of July to allow authorities more time to complete an accurate set of accounts. As I say, we published ours on the 22nd of June, so we were well in advance of that deadline. And we have until the 30th of September to have a fully audited set of accounts published. Grant Thornton have started their external audit. They started with us on the 14th of June, and the audit is progressing well. And they are due to complete by the 30th of September deadline, and we will be coming back to Audit and Governance Committee in September in order to sign off the final statement of accounts. External audit's progress so far has been good. They provided a verbal update to Audit Committee on Monday afternoon and stated that they haven't found anything to date that would warrant a change to our accounts, which is very positive. Albeit that we are expecting a more significant challenge this year as a result of moving into a higher risk category with external audit, and because of changes in audit processes, meaning that our valuations and a couple of other assumptions are under a bit more scrutiny, but they are being robustly audited each year. So when we presented the accounts on Monday afternoon to Audit Committee, they were reviewed, agreed and signed off before coming here. there were a number of questions, sort of 6 or 7 questions that were presented by Audit Committee. Chair, would you like me to go through what those questions were and the responses provided?
Just give a highlight of 2 or 3 of them, if you like. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the key things that changed this financial year was the pension liability. It increased in the year by £115 million. And one of the questions that came up was around when we knew about that change in pension liability. So our answer to that was that technically we don't know what the final valuation change is going to be until the actuaries, the actuaries that we appoint, give us the valuation at the end of the year. But obviously during the year we were aware that the external market conditions and the global market conditions were under a lot of pressure as a result of the COVID pandemic. So we were expecting that pension liability to increase, but we didn't know the final valuation until the actual end of the year. Another question that came up was around the note 41, which was events after the reporting period. And we were asked why we'd disclosed the value for Sherborne Recycling Facility, but not the value for the Mel Square purchase. And the reason for that was that the Mel Square 1 Limited purchase from Iron Properties was considered commercial. And at that time, we didn't want to disclose the commercial figure in the accounts. And we may choose to change that for the final accounts, for the final version come September. Another question that was asked was around whether or not we'd got any borrowing or any lending with Thurrock Council, which we don't. And the reason that was asked was because Thurrock Council, I think, were potentially in a bit more financial trouble, and there was a bit of risk around us lending with those. But we don't have any dealings with Thurrock Council in our accounts to be aware of. There were then a couple of minor presentational questions and a couple of minor tweaks that were proposed by Audit Committee, which we will consider between draft and final. But that was it really. Only, like I say, only 6 or 7 questions were raised. But obviously, I think those questions will be published in the minutes for Audit Committee when they are published. So from my point of view, just to summarise, yeah, we're seeking approval from Governance Committee of these draft accounts whilst the external audit continues ahead of them coming back in September. And I'm happy to take any questions on the accounts or the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please? Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, excellent. So just so I'm clear, Adam, Audit haven't proposed any changes that have been made between Monday and today. So what we're seeing in front of us this evening is the same as Audit saw on Monday, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly the same.
Excellent. Excellent, okay. I mean, in that case, this is Governance Committee, it's not Resources, so I don't think necessarily need to go through the whole accounts necessarily. I think the way in which we've produced the accounts and the way in which we audit them and make sure that they're fit for purpose is fine. The only observation I really had about them is on page 29 of our agendas, which levels. It was at 109% of pandemic levels in June. So I think the intention's good, but that example is wrong in fact. So I think it would be useful to get rid of it.
Unfortunately, due to system issues, you dropped out straight after the words page 29. So I can only assume there is no question and it's all sorted. So could you repeat it, please?
I could, and I will do it more briefly than I did in the first place. Page 29, the final paragraph, the example of rapid expansion of home working, reducing the volume of traffic isn't actually correct because back in June, traffic was 109% of pre-pandemic levels, but we still had a very high percentage of home working. So I think it would be good to change that example to something else if possible.
Yeah, we could certainly look into that, yeah.
Okay, but aside from that, no other questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Grinsell, please.
Thank you, and it's really in relationship to Councillor Caldwell's question. I'm not privy to the statistics that obviously he has in front of him, and I certainly wouldn't argue with him over those statistics. It's not actually what I see locally, but there you go. I'm happy to accept that, and I think really what Councillor Caldwell is suggesting is that maybe that paragraph should read: the COVID-19 pandemic has also demonstrated that things could be done differently, full stop. Because there are matters, it's maybe just the example that isn't potentially relevant. So I think that could overcome that situation, Chair.
Do you agree with that, Councillor Caldwell?
I do.
Thank you. So presumably, if we take that last sentence out?
Yeah, we can look to do that, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions, please? There don't appear to be any. So therefore, we have been asked to approve the Council's draft statement of accounts for 2021. And can I ask for agreement, please, this evening? All those in favour? We have a unanimous decision. As I said earlier to you, ladies and gentlemen of the team, thank you very much for the presentation that you gave us this evening. And to the excellent team with Paul Johnson heading it, the service you provide is first class to the citizens and residents of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can I, sorry, before you move on, Chairman, can I just confirm with members that you're all supporting the approval of the accounts subject to that amendment on page 29? That's what you're all agreeing to? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We now move on to the next part of the agenda, which is where I jumped, unfortunately, from to number 6. It's the annual governance statement on page 151 to 176. And I believe Mr. Ollie Dodds is going to do that for us.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got the annual governance statement before you, seeking your approval. The AGS demonstrates the effectiveness of governance and internal control at the council. It shows that we conduct our business in accordance with appropriate laws and standards, and that public money is safeguarded and used effectively, efficiently, and economically. I'll just say now, my role in the AGS has mainly been to gather the information and coordinate the assurance statements from the heads of service, assistant directors and directors. So if we move on to the statement itself, pages 157 to 161 detail how we meet the core principles of the governance framework. Pages 162 to 170 set out how we ensure the effectiveness of our governance framework, and it also details the various sources of both internal and external assurance provided to the council. And page 171 to 172 details the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And pages 173 to 175 details any significant governance issues, and still including those that were being brought forward from last year. I'll leave it there for any questions.
Any questions, please, to Ollie? Councillor Ashraf.
Thank you, Ollie. One of the questions I did want to ask was on review of effectiveness, which is number 5. particularly around the processes in maintaining and reviewing the effectiveness of the governance framework. I just wanted to know if where diversity, equality and inclusion would feature in there. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, Councillor. Yes, we have our own equality and diversity policy, which will be part of our governance framework.
So is that under equality management or is that under something else?
I'll have to check that, Councillor, and get back to you if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Ashraf? You will get a response. You will get a response to your question direct.
Okay, and I have one more question.
Please.
Yeah, under 5.5.6, under the equalities framework, you speak about equality screening is included as part of the procurement process for organizations. I just wondered if there was a equality screening on recruitment as well?
There is, Councillor, but I'll have to get back to you again with the details if that's what you require.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Caldwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I don't know if it's a question for you necessarily directly, Ollie, or just more of a general observation. So I was looking at 5.1, which is the assurance from members section. And obviously in full council, we approve the council plan. I mean, that's point A under 5.1.1. What I wonder about, and I haven't been able to see this anywhere, is how the council assures the delivery of that plan as a whole piece. I've had calls recently to look at how some of the other councils in the country operate, and quite often they have an overview and scrutiny board that covers the council as a whole, and then there are subcommittees around that that deal with housing and economic development and so on and so forth. And I couldn't quite see anything analogous within our governance framework, and I'm just wondering perhaps what everybody else's understanding of that is. How do we assure that the council is actually delivering in the round against its top level plan? Because I'm not quite sure how we do that at the moment.
I'd have to take that question and get back to you, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I think all would agree that with the COVID has been mentioned so much through the report, that this authority has done an excellent job in endeavouring to protect the residents of Solihull, and everyone behind it, from the health team to senior officers, and keeping us informed of exactly how the situation has been going in Solihull. Unfortunately, at the moment, it has gone a little bit on the downward trend, but I do feel that they need to be congratulated in the way they have been coping with this COVID problem that we have in Solihull and the rest of the country. I'm sure you'd all agree to that, hopefully. Yes? Good. The questions, please, for Ollie. Yes, Councillor Caldwell.
Apologies, it's not actually for Ollie. I'm wondering whether Deborah might be able to give us a steer on this. When is this due to come before full council? Because obviously we'll approve this, but I presume it's a recommendation to go before full council. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm not so sure that it is. I believe it's signed off through the cabinet. But let me, Ollie, would you know the answer to that?
I do. It's actually, so it's been approved by the audit committee on Monday, just gone, although they did raise some queries. None of them would have changed the content of the report. But it's the approval process is now, as it were, following your approval. If you wish to give it, of course, it gets formally signed by the chief executive and the leader, and then it appears in our accounts.
Thank you. The reason I say that is because I think both Councillor Ashraf and I would like to get the answers to those questions before we can actually be happy with approving the statement as it stands at the moment. But at the same time, don't want to be too awkward. So I don't know if it'd be possible to defer this decision before to get those answers.
Excuse me.
Sorry,
Chair.
somebody else tried to say something then.
Yeah, sorry.
Julie, please.
Yeah, sorry. I've certainly got the answer to one of the questions. So in terms of the council plan progress, I've just had a look at the work programme for Resources and Delivering Value Scrutiny Board, and it's item number 15 on their work programme for 2021-22 to receive a report on progress in terms of delivering the council plan.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, Julie.
Hopefully that answers your question, and that then is the precursor to the council plan update that follows that.
Thank you, Julie. Anything for Councillor Ashraf at all? No?
No, I haven't been able to find the answers to those two yet, sorry.
I think if you can give her a written answer in the next 7 days, for instance, that should, I would think, hopefully satisfy us so we can proceed with supporting the request in the report. You're happy with that? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Keep switching on and off. Could I have the support of the full committee? We're asked for the approval of the annual governance statement for 2021, and the audit committee also have been asked to endorse the same on the 26th of July, or will be on the 26th of July. They did, and therefore we're just ratifying that decision. So could I ask for full approval, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. That has been approved this evening. Right, I don't think we need our finance. If the finance team wishes to stay on, they are welcome to, but if you all wish to now go into the kitchen, make a cup of tea, have your evening meal, that's fine. But thank you very much indeed, as always, for the very competent way you have dealt with this particular item. Thank you. Right. The next item is on the agenda, which is, get it right, is item 7, the review of the Aldermanic scheme, Ordinary Alderman scheme. Deborah Merry, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So at the last meeting of the Governance Committee, when you were considering some nominations for appointment as honorary aldermen, you started to have a discussion about the qualifying criteria, and you requested that a report should come back to this committee so that you could have a review of the honorary alderman scheme. So I've set out in the appendix the current scheme as it is, and I've also done a bit of research and given you information about what the other West Midlands authorities honorary alderman schemes look like, and that's set out on page 178, paragraph 3.5. And then I've also just added another appendix which gives you information about all of the former councillors who are now honorary aldermen, and the qualifying lengths of service and eminent positions that they had held, which were taken into account at the time they were appointed as honorary aldermen. So it's over to you, really. I mean, there are no specific requirements about what needs to go into an alderman scheme. It's really a matter for the council to set at their discretion. But really, you just need to bear in mind that it was introduced as a way of recognising the hard work and commitment and dedication of the council's long-serving former members, and that if you change the criteria to make it more easy to qualify, potentially run the risk of devaluing the scheme and the achievement of those former members who are already honorary aldermen. But as I say, Chairman, it's over to you, and the scheme can be whatever the council wants it to be. So if you want to make a recommendation to council that the criteria be changed, then that's what we can do moving forward from this evening.
Councillor Grinsell wishes to open the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of things. At our meeting when this was raised originally, both Councillor Caldwell and I suggested that it should be around political terms, i.e. 4 years from election. So if that's still the case, and if Councillor Caldwell also still maintains what we discussed at the previous meeting, that it should be around political terms, we're therefore looking, in all honesty and in my view, either 12 or 16. 8 is too small. 16 to me seems a little onerous, especially for someone as aged as my good self. So I think 12 is, and I note that Dudley and Sandwell both have those terms. I would always want to see included within anything we put to full council that the proviso of exceptional service or circumstances should also be put into this, and certainly we have already proposed that Councillor Nash and Councillor Slater be put forward with under the current rule, and Councillor Nash wouldn't necessarily apply even if we accept the 12-year plus exceptional circumstances. So I think, in all honesty, I would be proposing and hope to get a seconder that we put forward. But the first, and just if Deborah could answer me, we have to put this to full council first for a final approval. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, that's correct. It's the council that will sign off the scheme based on a recommendation from this committee.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies where I was going to go after the event. But yes, I'd like to propose that it be amended to show 12-year service. However, council could consider either exceptional circumstances or eminent service during that period. That's what I'd like to propose. Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully I'll get a seconder for that.
Councillor Deborah just wants to ask a question.
Just a point of clarity about what you're proposing there, Councillor Grinsell, because the scheme at the moment says 15 years service and eminent service. Are you proposing, I think from what you said, you're suggesting 12 years service with discretion for the council to consider exceptional service or eminent service? It's not a 12 years and eminent service, it's 12 years or eminent service. And or. So somebody with 4 years, if they'd had a senior position, potentially could qualify. Is that what you're proposing?
I think you're stretching that a little bit, Deborah, but if we take Councillor Nash, for example, who had 9 years, but nevertheless had eminent service, we've already put forward to full council, and they will be granted honorary aldermanship come hopefully this October.
If I could just come back on that, my understanding in the case of Councillor Nash was that the committee had regard to her exceptional and lengthy service as a town councillor at both Fordbridge Town Council and Chelmsley Wood Town Council for a period of 25 years or more on each. but entirely up to the committee to go forward with whatever you're comfortable with.
Before I call in Councillor McCarthy, I tend to go along with what Councillor Grinsell has put forward, but I honestly believe it should be 12 years with eminent service, so that someone's either been the leader of the party, a mayor, distinguished chairperson, but just to be a councillor for 12 years, I don't think that warrants it, quite honestly. So no disrespect to anyone who has been just an average councillor, that 'tis eminent service, mayor, chair, possibly. That is what I call eminent service. I think that's what you really meant, didn't you?
Happy to amend my proposal based on what you've just said, Chair.
Thank you. So we're now clearer with regard to what is now being suggested, and Councillor McCarthy would like to say a few words.
Thank you. You set me up for something spiritual then. I feel like I'm going to be lacking now. No, I was just going to say that that I understood that what Councillor Grinsell was saying was 12 years with eminent service. And I know that when in the previous discussion, we'd mentioned Councillor Nash and Councillor Slater, that despite them being below the 15-year requirement, the mayoral position was a huge time commitment, and it was a huge commitment to the borough there. So that would qualify. So I'd support the 12 years with the eminent service as well. And I think, you know, that mayoral, that would, to my understanding from the previous discussion, the mayoral qualified both of them as well. Thank you.
Councillor Caldwell.
Yes, I think I can agree with what's been said. I think 12 years with eminent service is definitely the way forward. I mean, and I think, Chair, you've got it just about right. If it's a chair of a committee or scrutiny or a leader or a cabinet member or the mayor, I think that qualifies. I think that would be fine.
Why did you pull a face when you said mayor? Because we were very important people.
I wasn't aware I did, actually. I was just going to say, I mean, if you think 16 years is onerous, don't go and be a councillor in Wolverhampton. They really want a pound of flesh from you before they're going to make you an alderman over there.
I mean, there could very well be, such as like Flo Nash, where we bent the rules. We might find someone in 10 years' time who has not been a mayor, but has done 11 years and has done something which has been highly regarded. I mean, you can always bend it slightly, but I think we need to get a proper solution to this situation once and for all. It is a real honour to anyone who does get this honorary alderman, but we don't want to be giving it out to just people who've been councillors, worked very hard for the authority, but it's just that little bit extra drive that they've done. Speakers, please. Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. At the end of the day, of course, this committee has the discretion to appoint a new member, alderman. So I'm happy to go along with the proposal as amended from Councillor Grinsell.
Councillor Grinsell, you want to add again?
Yes, I do want to add again. Can I ask that it still remains as potentially retrospective?
Chairman.
Just interject here. Can we approve what we've just decided on? There is going to be another addition which is separate to this particular change. And I think that can be after we've decided on this amendment to the original rules. Can I get an agreement then that you're in favour with what was put forward by Councillor Grinsell, 12 years with eminent service. All those in favour? Thank you. Grinsell mentioned about retrospective. Because of the, shall we say, lower standards that we've created, is that the right word? I don't know, but there was a councillor who worked very hard and mayor of this authority, who was not put forward to be an honorary alderman. And I know it caused quite a lot of distress, especially to his wife, who unfortunately passed away not long after the decision was made. And that person was former councillor Gary Allport. And I looked up the details that he became a councillor in 2004 to 2016. And he was mayor 2007-8 and deputy 2008-9. There has been one or two suggestions that if we amended our original decision, that maybe there would be a sympathetic thoughts for Gary Allport on a retrospective application. Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I believe that we can have retrospective, but only going back to the beginning of the scheme, which was 2010, I believe. I know Deborah will tell us in a minute, but I think it was 2010, and the gentleman you have referred to would therefore qualify.
Just to clarify, the scheme at the moment says that they must have been a serving member within the previous 10 years of the start of the scheme. So going back from 2010, 10 years before that. So I think the intention at the time was that we didn't end up with councillors who'd served in the 1920s and 30s being suddenly brought in to be honorary aldermen. So yes, the 10 years is prior to the start of the scheme.
So with my, for instance, long service in Birmingham and the county in the 1970s, I would have been considered if I'd done it on a short term in Solihull. Would that be right? Do you follow me?
So service within 10 years prior to the start of the scheme,
Yeah.
which began in 2010. So any service from 2000 onwards, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So that's right. Yeah. So someone who's worked for, was a councillor in another authority, that would be included with it or not?
I wouldn't necessarily expect you to consider service with another local
Oh, I see.
authority,
No,
although
no,
that,
okay,
you know, if
well,
you
I've got it all
considered that
wrong.
was exceptional public service, it may be something
I
you've
don't
got
have
to
to
take into
worry about
account.
that because I've done 31 already. So
If I could just to come back on the point I think Councillor Davis was trying to make was that if you amend the scheme now, the qualifying criteria now from 15 years to 12, would a nomination of somebody who has had previous service but a nomination that you haven't yet considered, would the current criteria apply? And my answer to that would be yes. If you get a nomination now, you assess it on the basis of the current criteria, not the criteria that were in force 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
well,
Yeah, I think it's only fair for members present who are not part of the Conservative group that when Councillor Allport, the former Councillor Allport, was no longer a councillor, became no longer a councillor, it was discussed at length in group, and it was very much that Councillor Allport had not served 15 years. And therefore it was decided at that point in time that it would not be appropriate purely based on the 15-year criteria. Nothing else was considered at all. So just for other members around the table who weren't present at that group meeting, we made that decision purely on the criteria of you had to serve 15 years. I think just to be totally open and transparent, Chair. Thank you.
I would like to hear from, say, the opposition members, please, because I think it's important that to hear your views as to whether we go forward or not. We've accepted the changes with regard to the term, but it's now a particular individual, and it would be interesting to hear. And nothing will be held against anybody with what their opinions are or views. Laura McCarthy.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you can probably guess what I'm going to say. I mean, I sat here at the last meeting and I argued that Glenys Slater should be allowed to be an alderman from 13 years service. You know, this is 12 years service. And when I first met Glenys, one of the first things she said to me was how proud she was of being mayor and how much of a commitment it is, not just for the councillor, but also for their entire family. So, I mean, knowing exactly what she did as mayor, and from watching Councillor Davis as mayor as well, I know that it takes up every aspect of your life. So, I mean, for me, personally, I'd be happy for anyone who served as mayor to be an alderman and that to be retrospective as well. So I'm happy if a nomination did come forward, I'm happy to support that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like former Councillor Allport would meet the criteria that are set out now. So I'm not sure it would even merit a debate necessarily. He would qualify on the basis of time served and notable service. So if someone wants to put the form in, we can make the correct decision, I presume.
That's fine. I wouldn't want this to go to council and then have an argy-bargy over it at a council meeting, which I think would be exceedingly embarrassing because the name would come out anyway. Therefore, it's a situation where we either say, yes, we accept that situation and would approve it automatically. Or if it couldn't be approved automatically, then I'd say we don't proceed.
I mean, what I would say is that, I mean, we've discussed that we would continue to apply the scheme retrospectively. I don't think it's as an application was never made for Councillor Allport to become an alderman. So I think there isn't any. It's not as if that happened and then it was turned down on the basis of lack of service. So I'm not sure there's any grounds to be concerned. Actually, if he it sounds like he qualifies from what we've been told. So, like I say, let's have a form and we can put it through the process.
That's very generous of you all. And everyone's in agreement then. So we need to get a form put in. I believe Stuart would be happy to do that on our behalf, and whichever. And I think that's a very nice gesture. And in all honesty, I mean, Gary Allport, I haven't seen him for ages, but he's having a memorial service because he couldn't have a service for his wife when she died during the COVID. He's having a memorial service for various people he's invited. And I think it'd be rather nice that he would be able to be aware that at least it's going to council. And that's, you're shaking your head.
So my understanding of what you're agreeing now is looking at the scheme of enrolment, which is on page 183 in the agenda pack. The only thing that you're changing is the requirement for the number of years service to be changed from 15 to 12. All other aspects of the scheme remain unchanged, and that will be a recommendation that goes to council. Now, I know a lot of you around the room have said that you would welcome a nomination to come forward for Councillor Allport to be made an honorary alderman, but that nomination isn't in front of you this evening. So there will be no recommendation about former Councillor Allport tonight. But you have given an indication that you would be sympathetic should one come forward in the future.
Right. So if, for instance, Councillor Davis managed to get a form that he agreed that he wished to be nominated, that would be sent to you or the Chief Executive, and would then come to the next Governance Committee in September, and it might then go to the October council meeting invited for endorsing.
Yes, any recommendation made by this committee in September would go to the October council meeting. The way the scheme works, though, and this is a legislative requirement, the Local Government Act, we have to have a separate council meeting specifically for the purpose of confirming the appointment of the honorary alderman. That couldn't be done on the 6th of October. No. Because the 6th of October would be the day on which the council agreed to do it, and we couldn't then give the necessary notice to actually hold the meeting to confer the status of alderman. So that would come through in December.
Yes.
Yes. In October, we will have a special council meeting for the purpose of confirming those nominations that you put forward last time, which went to council in July. But anything that you approve in September will go to council as a recommendation in October, and then the special meeting to confirm it would be December.
So making it quite clear, if Councillor Davis goes to see Gary Allport with a form and he says, "Oh, thank you very much," nothing will happen until basically the October full council, where we'd have endorsed it in September, and it would then go to an extra special meeting again in December like we're doing in October. But he can't say, yes, definitely it's happening until it's been thoroughly gone through in the Governance Committee in September. Ooh. And everyone's content. And I appreciate the support that has come from the opposition members, and I really do. Thank you very much indeed. I think we've got one other item, if we're all in agreement. Do we have to have a vote on it? Yes, so a vote, just vote. Yes, Claire, thank you very much. Senator Davis, you haven't voted. Thank you. Item 8 is the appointment of an independent member of the Audit Committee. And I'll ask Deborah just to quickly go through this item.
Yes, Chairman. So the Council's Audit Committee is comprised of 3 independent members who are selected, and then 3 councillors. And at the moment, we have 2 of the independent members whose 4-year terms of office are due to come to an end in December. So this is just putting arrangements in place now, so that we don't find ourselves with 2 of the independent members having come to the end of their term without them being replaced. So the suggestion is that the 3 councillors who are currently on the Audit Committee, that's Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Alsop and Councillor Sanderson, be appointed as a panel so that they can interview potential candidates, and they'll be supported by Steve Sparks, the Head of Internal Audit, through that process, to interview candidates and then make a recommendation to Council for the appointment of new members.
The 2 people who are retiring, do they not wish to, or could they stand again? If they wish.
Yes, they could stand again. I understand one of them is quite keen. I'm not so sure about the other one.
Okay.
But yes, they could apply.
Chairman, can I move the recommendation as printed?
Did you want to speak?
I was only going to ask, does the position attract an allowance, or is it purely voluntary? It's voluntary. Okay.
actually, I tell you wrong on that. There is an allowance for the chairman, a small allowance for the chairman, which I think is about £800 a year, but there is no allowance for the other independent members.
Right, well, it's just gone 10 to 7. Worked exceedingly well again, as usual, the Governance Committee. Thank you for your attendance. I think it's probably just about to stop raining, so hopefully the car's not too far away from the entrance, and have a safe trip home. Thank you very much indeed.